This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
We are back with Eric and Ed. Excited to have you guys here joining us again. If you missed some of our last podcasts, don't worry. We will catch you back up on as to who they are, what they do. But overall, I got to ask Eric Copeland first. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And what's the response you always give me?
Best day of my life.
Isn't that beautiful, right? That's the way it should be? And we got to say that more often. CEO of EMC Consulting and Coaching based out of Atlanta. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll introduce Ed, and we'll get to today's topics.
Sure. So I am, like I said, Eric Copeland, the CEO of EMC Consulting and Coaching.
Yeah.
We are an executive coaching firm that help athletes, professional athletes, not only thrive in sports, but also thrive in their professional lives. I don't know, Ed, if you want to give your intro?
Bring it on. That's your cue.
No problem. Sometimes I wait for permission.
You're
everybody, I'm Ed Rohn. I'm also a coach in every sense of the word. Holistically, I coach executives. I coach professionals, teams. And my passion is working with youth sports and coaching and helping with organizational development as well as actually coaching on the field.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I know today we're going to dive into some serious talk, right, about the certain assessments that's involved. But I don't have the notes yet, so I'm going to ask you to start it off. Go for it, boys.
Sure. So Ed has agreed today to share his what we call his Hogan assessment.
Yeah.
And Hogan assessment is what we do as coaches to get a baseline about our clients in terms of who they are. And it's an analytical, non-biased assessment about the person. It measures three areas. It measures their personality. It measures their development survey, and then also it measures their motives, values, and preferences. So our plan is to go through all three of those. We'll try to do it during this call, but if not, we'll follow up on the next call. But definitely take this time to kind of review and delve into Ed's assessment. So first, we want to start with Ed's what we call his HPI, which is the Hogan Personality Inventory. And this measures the bright side, how Ed shows up every day, what type of person is he when he's not stressed, when he's just regular old Ed, happy-go-lucky Ed, who is he as a person? And this particular assessment measures a few areas. It measures his emotional stability, which we call adjustment. It also measures his ambition and sociability, which is what we call his extrovertness. How is he outgoing or not? We also measure his aggressiveness, through his interpersonal sensitivity, and we measure his prudence, which basically measure his dependability. How dependable is Ed, and also his inquisitive and learning approach. Basically how open is he to new experiences. So in looking at your scores, Ed, your inquisitiveness really stood out. So I guess a question I have is, do you find yourself asking people a lot of questions?
I take it further than that. It's a philosophical thing for me. I've adopted the moniker of being a lifelong lover of knowledge and instruction. And so being inquisitive about life, from all the way from a philosophical to esoteric levels, all the way down to different concepts. Maybe it has to do with sports, with defenses and offenses and different schematics. I like to delve deep into things and get a broad base of knowledge about whatever it is that I'm involved in.
Okay. Now, is that something that was instilled in you as a child, or is that something that you just innately had growing up?
I would say both. I definitely, it definitely was instilled in me. Both my parents were the type of people that demanded that, I paid attention to my studies and learned. We had conversations about current affairs and history and things of that nature. And so I was used to having those conversations and that being a part of my environment. But, it takes more than just that. You also have to personally, be interested in these things. So not only is it my foundation, but it's something that I actually leaned into. And, it's carried me throughout life, through my undergraduate career and in my professional life.
Okay. Um, Interesting. So, but I guess, are you now, I guess as a parent, do you instill that into your kids, in terms of try to, I guess, arouse their curiosity and get them to be inquisitive?
I do. And I think as a parent, sometimes it can be frustrating at times because it's kind of like you're going through a process of trial and error where you're presenting them things and then you're trying to see what takes root. Everybody knows, the kids are always interested in things. For 1 minute, they want you to go buy stuff and then they put it down and they run away from it. I mean, it's much like that with ideas and concepts, putting books in front of them and having
Mm,
conversations and there's so much you invest so much in your kids that you're hanging on every signal that you can receive from them, whether it be verbal or behavioral, to see if they're taking on that characteristic. And I think they all do in a certain way. And so, once I put myself to the side, I can build the culture and the concept of, always been a lover of knowledge and instruction into the environment, and then sit back and see what they do with that, see what they go ahead, what fields of study that they go ahead and delve deep into.
So I guess as your child, if you, I guess speaking as if someone was your child, I guess it'll be kind of hard for them to pull a fast one over you because you're probably going to ask a bunch of questions, right? Like why'd you do this? What made you do that? Do you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, but I think it's more so not trying to catch them in anything or keep them from pulling a fast one, but it's more so, I'm big on the idea that, we talk to ourselves more than we talk to everybody else. Your subconscious is a tape recorder and it hears everything that you say. So, it's kind of like your mouth is like your hand when they say, you point at something and three fingers are pointing back. You say 100 words and you probably hear 300 exponent of what you say just because you play your own words. So I look at it, I ask questions to get them to articulate themselves to see what story they're going to tell themselves. Um, I'm more interested in seeing, what they're going to do with the tool that is their mouth and their words than I am in catching them, in the midst of it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like I say, your subscale, and I guess I should probably delve into that. In each of those categories have subscale, and the Hogan definitely measures those subscales. And for you, curiosity really stood out within your inquisitive scale, and also too what stood out too in terms of culture. Um, so I guess as a person, or you're a person that's really into history?
Yeah, actually, my undergraduate degree is in history and public policy. So
Okay,
I'm a fan of history and a student of it. Um, and I've studied history, from antiquity all the way up to the present day. And so I'm definitely big on understanding historical context. I'm big on recognizing patterns, and I use those skills to inform, my decision making.
okay. And so, is there any particular form of history, like world history, U.S. history, that you really have a preference for, or is just all history?
Well, there was a time when I would have said the U.S. 20th century history, um, but things have evolved as I've evolved, and I think that you know with the fact that I had a minor in public policy, there's a strong philosophical bend there, and I think that's when I reflect on my education, that's what comes out. When we talk about policy, whether it be form of government all the way down to if we're gonna how we legislate parking in the city, whether we're gonna use meters or people are gonna scan and use smartphones now. It all it's all built on a foundation of philosophy. Here in America, we talk about, the inalienable rights granted to man by God. That's a philosophical statement. And so I would say the history of government or studying history is in a long way studying the macro philosophy of governments that have existed, throughout time.
So how do you tie that I guess your love of history into like what you do in terms of sports, in terms of like coaching sports? How do you connect those two together? Because I know, a lot of people, try to connect those two because like especially as you're getting to a point where you start breaking records, people try to tie the historical significance of how the record tied into whatever it is that athlete is doing. So I guess how do you do that? Or do you do that?
Well, I think it's helped me the most as a coach developing a certain perspective about how to be a team on the coaching staff. Um, Everybody, people run different schemes and people have different ways of doing things. And I liken it to, adopting a certain type of government. You have capitalism, you have communism, so on and so forth. And in the popular zeitgeist, people frame these isms, if you will, as right or wrong based on, what team they happen to be carrying the banner for.
Mm-hmm.
But as a coach, as a leader, I can't look at defensive schemes or offensive schemes the way we look at communism as capitalism or vice versa, because that would interfere with my ability to function as a teammate. Because now I'm putting my feelings for philosophy above the philosophy of, say, the head coach that's implementing that scheme. And so having that philosophical foundation has made it easier for me to recognize the difference between right and wrong and just straight just philosophy. And
Okay.
it definitely has served me well because it gives me the patience to sit back and watch what's going on and learn the game from different perspectives, because I see it the same way I see governments. That it's just different ways of doing business, different ways of running a country, different ways of operating an offense or defense on the football field.
Okay. All right. And another one of your sub scales that was pretty high was ambition, and that just kind of measures your, competitiveness as well. So I guess, you know, especially, with you being involved in athletics and stuff, I guess, do you, well, let me just take a step back and say, and also looking at your sub scale, self confidence really stood out. So I guess question is, are you a confident person?
About as confident as anybody else.
Okay.
I think we all have this universe that we're living in our mind. Um, but so I think I probably second guess myself or struggle with confidence the way anybody else would. But what I do is that I use my inquisitiveness to prepare myself to do things and to strengthen my ability to function in whatever world I'm trying to function in. And we know that preparation breeds confidence.
Right.
And so, if you're thinking about going to competition, there's always a level of insecurity about performance because nothing is guaranteed. And you could be clearly athletically or clearly strategically better than another team, but you have to execute. And being able to execute and being able to capitalize on your perceived or real advantages over your opponent or in the context of a competition, it comes back to preparation. And I believe that curiosity feeds my confidence because it forces me, it compels me to prepare.
Just
So
oh,
no, go ahead,
just
go ahead.
can anyone take the Hogan assessment test? Just curious,
Um,
or is it advised for certain ages and for those in athletics? That's
No, I mean anybody
it's
can. It's for anybody. It's usually we typically give it to people who are adults. I mean, because they got an understanding of them, somewhat more of an understanding of themselves. So it kind of helps them see who they are and how people see who they are. So, but yeah, it's typically, given to adults. And we, yeah, typically give it to our clients so we can get our understanding on who they are. So as we're working with them, we have a baseline on who they are and what makes them tick. So as we're, asking questions or probing and helping them, work through certain challenges, we kind of understand from a baseline perspective, okay, this is why they think the way they think. So help them to see the world from their perspective, and how to make changes, it's pretty helpful from that standpoint. Um,
What I
and
would add is
yeah,
that it's a wonderful tool for coaches. It has nothing to do with what particular field you're in. It really has to do with leaders and people who are trying to develop themselves, gaining more self-awareness.
right.
And that's what it's a wonderful tool for. As you see, Eric is going through some of the aspects of my report and asking me to articulate myself. And I think when you go through the full process, it causes you to have conversations and reflect on things from a different perspective, and it causes you to do it based on the way the environment sees you and not the way that you see yourself. And I think that's a very valuable tool for anybody that's trying to develop themselves.
Right. And I would say too, when I took it for myself, it was I kind of doubted, like, it's the results, especially when I went through it with my coach. But then I asked my wife afterwards. I'm like,
hmm.
hey, this is what the report said. You agree with that? She was like, yes. I'm like, whoa, okay. So,
Uh-huh.
wow, it's pretty accurate. So no, you'll be surprised on how telling this report is. The other question I wanted to ask, as you were talking about, the self confidence. So the question I have for you, Ed, is how do you keep yourself from becoming cocky, or how do you, yeah, yeah, how do you keep yourself from becoming, arrogant and cocky?
Hmm.
Oh, I it goes back to the curiosity. It goes back to if you accept the idea, that every opportunity, every engagement is an opportunity to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and you remain curious, then you can, you can keep your ego at bay. Um, and even as we went through the pathway of becoming coaches, and I went through that process, that's one of the major things major points of self awareness that I had to gain
Hmm.
is to put that on my frontal lobe constantly to lean into my curiosity, because you can see if you go deeper into my report, and we don't have time to do it, that I have a tendency to be triggered when I perceive people not to be on the same page that I'm on, and that's not a positive thing when you're a leader and you have to try to convince and influence people to see things a specific way, or you're trying to help somebody develop. You have
Yeah.
to put yourself to the side and you have to listen. And so, my superpower in terms of curiosity and inquisitiveness is something that I've leaned upon to carry me over the hump, and definitely keep that ego at bay.
Right.
Awesome. Go ahead, continue. Sorry, I interrupted and I
Oh no, no
trickled down the
problem.
whole thing.
No, 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 no. I'm glad you did.
Okay.
And another thing that came out of your in terms of your sub skill is accomplishment. So I guess the question I have is for you, Ed, is have you, I guess, do you feel like you've accomplished a lot in your career thus far?
Uh, that might be the downside of things. I think that there's always something else to accomplish. If I'm truly transparent,
Yeah.
I could do a better job at stopping the smell of the roses. I'm sure if I really looked at things in a holistic perspective, I could, appreciate more of the things that I've been able to accomplish in my time. But I'm competitive, and I do have a strong amount of ambition. So sometimes I have the propensity to look forward, the propensity to look for the environment to give me some type of positive feedback to make me feel a sense of accomplishment. And I probably could do a better job at getting that by being reflective and appreciative of myself and the opportunities that I've been given.
Now, you mentioned that you're competitive a few times. So I guess with being competitive, there's inevitably failure at times. So I guess how do you handle failure?
Hmm.
I guess grit my teeth and bear it. Um,
Yeah.
it's a part of the process. Uh, and I say that in jest, but the fact of the matter is that, you don't like it. You don't like being criticized. You don't like failing.
No.
But, I think about experience, emotional experience as a ring. And so you got an outer ring of that may be more egotistical, or you may feel the sting of negative feedback or failure. But the inner ring is always based
Yeah.
upon, being a better version of myself, based upon being curious and leaning upon that concept of being a constant lover of knowledge and instruction. And so it's always going to bring me back to center, and and give me the fuel to reflect on whatever failure that I experienced, whatever negative feedback that I got, and use that as a lesson and not necessarily as a point of pain, as a pain.
Now, are you able to like move past that failure, wherever it may be, to the next thing, or do you dwell on it? I guess, yeah. How quickly can you move on from any?
I, it's a process. There was a point
Mm-hmm.
where I would dwell there. I used to dwell on things more than I do now. Um, but I think it's according to the size of the failure and how close it is to your heart. Some things just don't really make a difference. If you're walking up the stairs and you miss a step and trip, that's not a failure that I'm gonna be consumed by. But if
Mm-hmm.
you make a major decision and you make a poor decision and you're impacted by this decision over a protracted period of time, then the time it takes to get over that particular failure is going to be longer. But ultimately, it's something that that I wrestle with, and I think that everybody wrestles with on a regular basis. And we just have, all you can do is practice being mindful. I don't know if you can ever say that you're never going to have negative feelings about failing.
Right. Well, I guess, Jill, I guess how much time we have, or I guess how we're on time.
You're good on time. Go ahead. Talk, talk. What do you
All
need?
right. Well,
You
no,
need
you
more
have a heart.
time? We're good. Go away. Go, go.
All right, I'll hit this last topic here too in terms of leadership, in terms of your subscale,
Sure.
which is pretty high for you, Ed. So I guess when you were in a group, do you have to be in charge? Do you have to be the man in the group, or can you defer your leadership to someone else?
Well, the way it shows up is that I can be impatient when things aren't moving along at a pace that I believe that
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with. I don't necessarily have to be the upfront leader,
Mm-hmm.
but I like I do like to be the backbone or the foundation of the
Mm-hmm.
environment, if you will. And so um, I don't have to fight the urge to be the upfront leader or the positional leader. I have to fight the urge to take charge sometimes.
Okay. Oh wow, I just got a minute for you for your hard stop here, and I
Go
really
ahead.
want to delve
Go, go,
into
go. Take a
how do
few more
you.
minutes. Go ahead. Go ahead. We have time. Go ahead.
Well, I know Ed doesn't, but I mean,
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You got to
No,
wrap
no,
up in two.
let's finish. Go get far away. I'll let you know when I
so
gotta go.
how do you pull yourself back in that instance where you say, "I got to take charge," when you can't?
It's interesting because I've been dealing with that particular issue a lot, in some of the things that I do, with the youth sports organization and just in life in general. And there's this one piece where you evaluate yourself and, you're like, I have a tendency to think that maybe I should pull back and do some emotional escapism and take my hands off completely. Um, but I've resigned myself to that not being necessarily the proper way to do things. You can't disengage. And so how it ties, I think it ties into that conflict resolution piece because it's some form of a conflict that I'm experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I've designed myself to addressing those particular conflicts is through conversation, through communication. Um, Personally, setting a rapport up with the team that I have where we have open communication and they can understand the reason behind whatever communication that I'm giving them is important because I want to be able to have honest communication without feeling like I'm stepping on anybody's toe.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, a lot of that hesitancy is internal. I'm not always sure that they're feeling what I'm feeling. I'm assuming they're feeling what I'm feeling. So it still points back to being an open communicator and talking on a regular basis. If we're talking about on the field, we'll put it in terms of talking on the field. And we both have logistics backgrounds. If we're talking about on the dock, it's about making sure that we communicate with everybody involved. We put up proper signage and that we have things organized so everybody knows what's going on. And if we're talking about leading teams, we're talking about having regular conversations about productivity, regular conversations about maybe issues that may be going on that need some correction. In other words, having a continuous improvement program in place so that these conversations are happening on a regular basis, so that when you have tough conversations, it's not really a tough conversation; it's just another conversation.
Right. Right. Well, Ed, I want to thank you. I know you're out of time here, but thank you, and we'll have to complete your assessment on the next call. The other two fields.
No, thank you, Jill. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
I'll
for
tell you
being
guys the
here.
truth. Well, this particular episode was a little more nerve-wracking than the others because this personality profile, you kind of lay bare your heart. But I think it was a good exercise, and hopefully people see the value in that Hogan test, and how a coaching session would go if they were to be evaluated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. All right, we'll say goodbye to you, Eric. I'm not done with you, okay? Bye, Ed. Eric, how do we want
Thanks,
to say? We
guys.
still got 2 more minutes, Eric. What else do you want to say? Anything else enlightening before we go?
Sure. So growth is uncomfortable because you've never been here before.
Yeah.
Because everybody said, "Oh man, I'm so uncomfortable about growing." Well, yeah, you should be because you've never been in that position before. So if it was comfortable, then you're not growing. I would think, right?
No, it's true. It's true. You have to. But a lot of us, it's so hard to get out of our comfort zone, you know? It's always a hard thing.
Right, right. And like to Ed's point here, as we go through that assessment, yeah, it's a very uncomfortable position to be, because you're delving into your inner being, and especially being on on a national podcast, bearing to the world, what makes you tick. But yeah, I mean that it can be challenging, especially, I've done this before,
Yeah.
someone, gone through my assessment, and it's like, wow, I never thought
Yeah.
about that. And so then you're trying to figure out, yeah, what does make me tick? Why do I tick that way? So yeah, it's definitely a soul searching experience.
Oh my goodness. Well, always a pleasure having you here. And if someone wants to reach out to you, how do we contact you, darling?
Sure. So you can reach out to me via my website at www.emcconsultingcoaching.net. That's www.emcconsultingcoaching.net. Or you can email me at emcconsultingandcoaching@gmail.com. That's
Beautiful.
emcconsultingandcoaching@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Pleasure having you. And looking forward to next week. Enjoy the rest of your day, sweetheart.
All right, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.